CSGO has a lot of classic maps that are still in the game today. I've mentioned countless times how old CS's most played maps are in comparison to most other games. Inferno, Nuke, Dust 2, Cobblestone, etc. are all maps that are closing in on 20 years old and are still fun, competitive maps at the top level. But not all maps are created equal, and many once classic maps have been lost throughout the years. Storm was lost in the transition between 1.6 and Source, Piranesi and Prodigy were lost in the transition between Source and Go, and most recently, Aztec and Dust were lost in a purge in 2017 after Operation Hydra. For this video, I will be focusing in on these last two maps purged after Operation Hydra. Also, I'm kinda sick right now when I'm recording this audio, so sorry if I sound weird. First off, let's take a look at the original Dust. Once the most popular map in all of Counter-Strike, now not present in the game save for a shortened version in Wingman and Demolition. Dust is very different from Dust 2, save from theming. If you look at the layout of the original Dust, you will realize that it really does feel like an early test for some of the tropes found in Dust 2. The B site looks like an early version of B site Dust 2, bomb site A looks a lot like T-Spawn, and mid looks like an early A site Dust 2. Dust is tied for the oldest diffused map in Counter-Strike with Nuke and Prodigy, all three of which being introduced along with the game mode. Seeing as there was literally no way to know how this game mode would work, I don't blame the map's creator, Dave Johnston, for the map's shortcomings. In fact, I would say that he did very well for someone making a map for a game mode that did not exist at the time he was building it. On the side of Aztec, it was actually made by that same Dave Johnston who made Dust. Aztec, on the other hand, is a much bolder take on the diffuse game mode than Dust was, at least in my opinion. Aztec is a very weird map. The entire map is strangely boxy in layout, more so than the average CS map. I mean, they were made in Gold Source and there really isn't much else you can make in that engine, but anyways. I don't think that any of the ideas in Aztec are inherently bad. I actually love it when mappers take creative decisions like this and make their maps risky. These risky maps tend to lead to innovations in map design. This did not exactly work out in Aztec though. Aztec is one of the most CT-sided maps ever. The map had these massive long angles that really favored snipers, and once the CTs got a few ops, your options on T-side became very limited. Along with this, rotations were made incredibly quick because of the thin shape of the map, and Valve only made this worse by adding a connector here in CSGO. With all that said, Dust and Aztec are definitely not up to the modern standards we hold in Counter-Strike maps. They're very imbalanced, and their layouts have not been seriously updated since the 1.6 version. In Counter-Strike now, there are really two different categories that maps can fall into: the 3-lane maps and the experimental maps. The current division looks like this, with Mirage, Inferno, Dust 2, Cache, and Ancient being the 3-lane maps, and Vertigo, Train, Nuke, and Overpass being more experimental. In practice, 3-lane maps are more fair and have worked best for competition throughout Counter-Strike's existence. Not to say experimental maps are bad, they're very fun in my opinion and can be tweaked to the point of being good, fair, competitive maps. Nuke, Train, Cobblestone, and Overpass have proved this, but these maps, in order to succeed, need to go through a lot of tweaking and perfecting before they are great. There is a reason that Nuke, Train, Overpass, Cobble, and Vertigo are the 5 maps that have changed the most since their first iterations in CSGO. Also, if you remember, every single one of those maps was hated when they were first introduced to the competitive pool. I think that the reason that Dust and Aztec have escaped these drastic balance changes that the previously mentioned maps received is because of their popularity. Both Dust and Aztec had periods in the game where they were the map, and I think that success has caused them to be deemed good enough by Valve. Then, when nobody played these maps because they just simply aren't good enough by modern standards, Valve just flat out removed them, never to return. Realistically, this was the right move at this point. These maps didn't really belong in a competitive queue. However, this was not what had to happen. There is a world where both Dust and Aztec could have been transformed into real, good, competitive maps, and this is where we need to get to talking about Vertigo. Dust and Aztec are both maps that I believe to be overwhelmed by their flaws, to the point that it would take too much work to get them to play well in a competitive setting. However, Vertigo was also in that state when they removed it from the competitive queue originally. At the same time, Dust and Aztec got the sick horse treatment after Operation Hydra. The difference with Vertigo is that it got some love from Valve and was revamped and added to the professional pool, and we have reason to believe that Aztec was planned to undergo this same process, but at some point through its development, it was scrapped and the assets were used for Ancient. We know this because of several reputable sources confirming this, as well as the fact that Ancient's assets in the Hammer editor don't say Ancient, they say HR Aztec, similar to how the revamped Dust 2's assets have HR Dust 2 added to them. Valve deemed Aztec, and probably by extension Dust 1, to be unfixable maps. Were they right in this? Well, the answer is not a simple yes or no. I believe that they could have, with a lot of time and playtesting, transformed both of these maps into great competitive maps. However, it's probably a lot easier to just create a new map than to try to make either of these two work. The unfortunate fact is that maps that are not as simple as the classic 3-lane design require a lot to make them competitively viable. Wait, let's pause really quick and define that. What does competitive viability even mean? I mean, if a map is unbalanced, it shouldn't really matter in CS since we swap sides halfway through the game. Why does a map being one-sided matter? To explain this, we need to dive a bit into the phantom zone of CSGO, the weird flaws of the game that we don't like to acknowledge. When people say a map is one-sided in CSGO, it really only means that the map is one-sided in a world where both teams are of equal skill and both teams have a full buy. The skill part is not an issue, it's why we like the game, overcoming these odds with skill and knowledge. It's the buy part that presents a problem. Let's look at Old Nuke for example. There was an old match between Very Games and NIP on CSGO's original Nuke that illustrates this best. Both teams were very good at the game at the time, and the matchup was expected to be quite close. NIP lost the pistol round and the coinciding follow-up round, but managed to steal an eco round in round 3 with some lucky running pistol headshots. They also won that follow-up round, but continued to lose every round for the rest of the half. Winning the first half 13-2 should put you at an advantage going into the next half, but no. NIP win their CT-sided pistol round and go on to not drop a point until the map was theirs, winning the game 16-13. This is why a one-sided map presents issues. It boils the winner of a game down to the luck-based elements of CS, RNG sprays, and pistol rounds. If those Glock shots from NIP had not connected to give them the weapons and positioning needed to win that crucial third round, the game almost certainly would have gone to either a tie leading to overtime or a Very Games victory. When taking that example into consideration, you'd need to remember that Aztec as it was in CSGO was more CT-sided than Old Nuke, and Dust wasn't far off. If the terrorists were to win the pistol round on Aztec, CTs wouldn't be able to get ops fast, allowing for them to get a few opening rounds before they can activate the most oppressive parts of Aztec's CT side. Alright, now that we've got that covered, let's talk about whether or not Aztec or Dust could have been fixed. I do think that with enough work, both of these maps could have been altered enough to be good competitive maps, but I mentioned earlier that the more unorthodox layouts require much more time and playtesting to become viable. What I didn't mention is that just because a map is viable, it doesn't mean that it's good. Vertigo is the best example of this. Valve have put countless hours into improving Vertigo from the state that it was in when CSGO launched, and they have succeeded in making it a competitively viable map. However, I think that the way Vertigo works at the top level right now still suffers from the map's unpatchable inherent flaws. Vertigo is a horrible map to spectate. Most rounds just boil down to spamming smokes on either site. It's not fun to watch a Vertigo match, unfortunately. And this is sad, because I think that Vertigo is a really fun map to play, and yeah, they made it viable. It's an even map. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it still suffers from the flaws of what makes Vertigo Vertigo. That's not to say that I wouldn't want Aztec or Dust to come back. I would much rather have some version of the maps present in the game than no version at all. But as much as I normally distrust Valve, if they spent 2 years trying to fix Aztec and they couldn't do it, I'll take their word for that. While it would be cool to have modern, more fair iterations of Dust and Aztec, the problem is that it would be impossible for these maps to escape their deep, inherently flawed layouts without becoming different maps entirely. And, I mean, I guess that is what happened to both of these maps at the end of it all. Thank you. If you like this video, you can leave a like, and if you want more content like this, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you.